Hello and welcome to our newest Spiders and Families. I'm Nicole Marantonio, the Director of Advising in the First Year Seminar Program. I'm joined by several of my colleagues in the School of Arts and Sciences who are here to share a bit about our interdisciplinary studies programs at the University of Richmond. We encourage you to post your questions in the Q&A box and know that we're not going to be answering questions until the very end of this webinar. We also will be recording the session for review later, so be sure that this is going to be a resource. And finally, at the end of our time today, if there are any questions that you have that surface after we sign off, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'll be including our email addresses in the chat at the very end. So before we get started, I did hand over things to my colleagues. I wanted to begin by briefly sharing a little bit about interdisciplinary studies programs. These are programs, and we'll focus during this session tonight mainly on our majors, interdisciplinary studies majors, that are made up of 2 or more areas of study. The programs that are represented tonight are Africana Studies, American Studies, Global Studies, and Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies. We do offer other interdisciplinary studies majors and minors, and certainly can begin to answer some of those questions if they come up this evening. Tonight's panelists just, again, represent some of our interdisciplinary offerings. And what we'll do is begin by providing a little bit more information about the respective programs and speak more to the coursework and experiences that students might have. And so just to begin by getting us started, I'll ask my colleagues to introduce themselves and to share their home department, as well as the interdisciplinary studies programs that they coordinate and or represent. So we'll begin with Dr. Patricia Herrera.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the University of Richmond. My name is Patricia Herrera, and I am in the Department of Theater and Dance, and I'm representing American Studies as well as Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies.
So good evening, you spiders. My name is Manuela Meyer, and I am an Associate Dean within the School of Arts and Sciences, and I am the Associate Dean of the Humanities and Social Sciences, which is Division 2, and I am also representing tonight, and I also teach, in addition to the history program, the Africana Studies program, as well as the Global Studies program.
And so to talk a little bit more about these various interdisciplinary studies programs, I was wondering if you could share a little bit more about how interdisciplinary studies differs from a more traditional major.
I can tackle that. I think that's a great question, Dr. Morantonio. So I think that when we talk about interdisciplinary study, we're actually referring to a method or a mindset that merges traditional educational concepts or methods in order to arrive at new approaches or solutions. Interdisciplinary study is an increasingly important concept within not just academia or college or universities, but also within the private and public sectors. Why? Because it allows both a rigorous and nimble approach to subjects of both great nuance and complexity.
That was beautifully said, Dr. Myers.
And I'd like to give our colleague, Dr. Plotz, an opportunity to introduce himself as well.
Hi. Sorry to be late. I totally could not find the link, and then I found it finally. It was like in a separate invitation email, so I was panicking over here. My name is Jeppe von Plotz. I'm an associate professor of philosophy at the University of Richmond and also a coordinator for the PPEL program, the program in politics, philosophy, economics, and law, which is an awesome interdisciplinary program that I'm really, really proud that we offer, and that I think is the perfect program for a certain subset of students. But for that subset of students, there is just no better major.
And I think that's a great segue. So what typically brings students to the various interdisciplinary majors that you work with, or that you represent?
I think there's students who are not who are thinking very expansive about either the type of work that they want to do, but more importantly, they're really interested in different things, right? And so sometimes a specific discipline can't answer, right, a question of investigation. So you draw on other disciplines to strengthen, right, the work or project that you want to pursue. So the idea of kind of weaving different disciplines and engaging with different critical frameworks to explore a question of investigation is at the heart of why students really choose interdisciplinary programs. Like, they're eager to just look at other disciplines to investigate a particular question.
Yeah, if I can follow up on that. I agree wholeheartedly with Patricia here that what draws students to the PPEL major is the recognition that there's a whole host of questions, as Patricia said, that you can't answer from any particular disciplinary vantage point, that you have to go interdisciplinary if you want to think well, speak well, write well, and act well in a certain type of domain of inquiry. So, for example, if you're thinking about what we should do about anthropogenic climate change, clearly it's an ethical issue. It's an ethical question. What should we do? And you can't deal with that question without ethics. But ethics can't answer the question for you or even understand the nature of the question itself, because the nature of the question exists at the intersection of economics and institutions or political science. So to understand why we face anthropogenic climate change as such a big challenge right now, you got to do economics. You've got to do political science, right? And if you want to enact change or advocate for action, you have to understand the institutional framework, the constraints of feasibility within which you're trying to advocate for activity. And to understand those feasibility constraints, you really have to go political science and economics, right? So if you want to think well, read well, write well, and act well about climate change or about immigration policy or about any of the big public issues we face, you've got to bring together philosophy, political science, and economics. And I think the students are drawn to the PPEL major because they understand that these questions you really can't deal with without going interdisciplinary. And I think exactly the same can probably be said for the other interdisciplinary programs we offer.
And I think that's a really good point that Dr. von Plotz brings up. So I'll just speak briefly about the two programs that I teach within, and that is Global Studies first, and then Africana Studies, which is a new interdisciplinary program that was formally launched this past fall of 2022, which is very exciting. So if we take the former, that is the Global Studies program, what does it exactly do? As Dr. von Plotz was saying, what this particular program does is it compels students, as well as the faculty members that teach within the program, to develop an integration of methods that are traditionally thought of as separate fields, if you will, or separate disciplines, such as history, such as business, or such as political science. And specifically, what we do in the program is the following. We engage students to actually think and study about the world, and critically, how has it been and continues to be shaped by globalization. So what do students do? Students study global and international politics, economics, business, media, history, political science, and culture. Why? So that they can become productive critical thinkers of these various processes, given that, as we know, as interactions between states, societies, and cultures increase, so too do these responses to these interactions multiply. So then the major aims to have students focus on these relevant issues, and it also provides them with a certain kind of intellectual flexibility to not stay stay confined within a particular discipline, if you will, if they wanted to stretch their intellectual wings. And then if I want to speak about the second program that I teach within, which is Africana Studies, which is quite thriving actually now, I would say that this particular program pushes for the critical and systematic examination of the cultures, histories, and experiences of people of African descent globally. And it grounds students in their multiple ways of knowing. So through multiple courses in the humanities, the arts, the social sciences, faculty and students take up the broader concerns of Africana studies.
I guess I would add, I think I answered the question really broadly, but thinking about the two interdisciplinary programs that I'm representing, American Studies, it really takes a look at the ways in which not only the history of America, but the transnational relationship that the United States has. And really it's about asking questions of the people who live in the society, the cultural production of what is being created in American study in the United States. But I think in thinking about this particular program and what draws students to this program is that it's really hands-on. We have a seminar, and I think that actually answers one of the questions, where it's focusing on Richmond. And I think this community engaged aspect of this program is one of the most compelling elements of the program, because you get to learn not only about Richmond, but about the way America works as a system and institution in relationship to communities in a very hands-on and a practical way. And then the Women and Gender and Sexuality Studies program that I'm also representing, it's also about the intersection of gender and sexuality, but thinking also about race, class. And there's an element in this program, if students are interested in doing internships and engaging in the community, there's also the WIL program as part of that as well. So there's different ways in which both of these programs are both about really engaging with the community that I am specifically also interested in.
And that's a great segue to talking a little bit more about the student experience. So what are some of perhaps examples of projects, different types of questions, engagements that students might undertake within your respective programs?
I can actually address that just at the outset, because to actually be a global studies major, because we don't offer a minor, one actually has to go abroad. So then study abroad is a critical experience that all of our students, I actually can't think of one right now, that has not had a fantastic, beneficial, rich, thriving, just fantastic experience, because it really offers students an opportunity to place themselves in an international setting and to frankly complement what they're learning in the classroom with what they're learning abroad, not only at the host college or university or at their home stay, but also just being outside, walking in the streets, whether it be in Buenos Aires, in Rio de Janeiro, in Madrid, in Istanbul. So I think that that's one of the experiences that's built into the major, that is global studies, that has been foundational for our students.
Yeah, happy to jump in. It's just, the thing is, and I think this goes for all the interdisciplinary majors, so they're very versatile. So giving sort of the typical experience is hard, because there's not like a norm core where you can draw typical experiences from. There's going to be a wide range, and actually they're not centered on any typical experience. So it depends a lot on what you want to do with the major, at least for PPEL. It can be tailored. So previously I mentioned climate change, so you can tailor it to work on environmental policy, but you could tailor it to work on tax policy, or you could tailor it to work on some other domain of public policy that interests you. And I think there's the danger of an interdisciplinary major is that you don't get depth, that you only get the breadth. So you're responsible, of course, working with your advisor and all that to actually go deep on something and become good at something you do, whether it's environmental policy or tax policy or immigration policy or whatever domain of policy we're talking about, and then get an internship in a related occupation, and then hopefully use that as leverage to a career. So it's gonna vary a lot because of the versatility of the majors, and the versatility is also kind of the danger. It is that you become, as they say, oh man, you can do a lot of things like and master of none is that's the danger. So you have to really be careful when you do an interdisciplinary major that you don't just get like a very shallow education in each of the disciplines and don't use it to go deep in something that you want to work with.
So what you just mentioned, I think it speaks to also the ways in which interdisciplinary programs are also very much student-driven, in that you can tailor projects with the student's interests, right? And so I think it's true for all of these programs that students come in with an idea. Sometimes students come in with an idea and they want to pursue and go deeper with a particular topic. And so what in particular American Studies and WGS is, and I'm sure all the other interdisciplinary programs, is that because you're using various frameworks, it allows you to go in the direction that you would like to go. So in many ways, it's very unconventional in that many majors say you are required to do this, that, and the other. And that is true for interdisciplinary programs, but there is some flexibility in the classes that you choose, right? So if I'm particularly interested and I am majoring in American Studies, but I have an international interest, right? I can go and really seek a series of classes that speak to that particular topic and create that specialty for myself, right, as a student. And so I think that is the beauty of interdisciplinary programs, is that you're able to tailor that. So yes, there is that issue of breadth, but there is also the ways in which you can really go deep in particular subjects that you're interested. And that also in terms of seeking out for internships, right, or any job employment opportunities that you're interested in, it actually is very directed in many ways to what the student is looking for. So I think there's something beautiful about that. If you're the kind of student that knows that you are passionate about a particular topic, then an interdisciplinary program is for you, because you are able to tailor it in such a way that you can pursue that and go deeper in that direction.
Oh, can I jump in here? Because that was just perfect. So that's exactly right. So say you want to work with environmental policy, right? You can satisfy the PPEL requirements with a whole host of courses. So you have to take something in economics, you have to take something in political science, you have to take something in philosophy, and so on and so forth. But if you want to work with environmental issues, you satisfy those requirements with environmental economics, with environmental ethics, and with some kind of environmental political science class. And that way you acquire the depth I was talking about before, while also completing the interdisciplinary education. So that's just exactly right.
So again, this is a good segue to thinking about the different courses that can be taken to fulfill elements of the majors. And so I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about, first, what courses might satisfy elements of the major, but then also particularly for our first year students, and I see a question right now in the Q&A, if a first year student is interested in choosing a major, do you have recommendations for initial courses that might be good gateways potentially, or good courses to try out in either fall semester or spring semester first year?
I think that's a great question. I would say that as a first year, which is a time for exploration of different disciplines and different kinds of studies, but in particular for the global studies major, as well as Africana, and frankly, some of these other interdisciplinary programs, I highly recommend that a first-year student, probably the first semester, maybe not the first week because you have enough on your mind, but to just reach out to the coordinator, reach out to the person that actually directs that particular program, which is a faculty member, send them an email, and if time allows, try to set up a meeting so you can meet with them and learn a little bit about the major and also the courses that are going to be offered that academic year, but also the next, because customarily we plan the academic schedule 2 years out. So then you can think about possible courses that you might want to add to your schedule or play with it. So in terms of global studies, so in addition to the senior capstone courses, all students must take one of 2 introductory courses, either Introduction to Comparative Politics, and that is Political Science 240, or Planet Earth, People and Places, and that's a course based out of the geography department. So again, those are 2 introductory courses, and students must just take one of them. So perhaps the first or second semester, a first year takes one of these courses or both to, again, test the intellectual waters, if you will, and see if this program speaks to them. As it relates to Africana studies, which is which again is a major that has 4 core courses, I highly recommend that a first year take Introduction to Africana Studies. And this course introduces students to the field, that is the discipline of Africana Studies. How has it been studied by different scholars? And really, it offers a very good rendering of the field as it is now and where it may go into the future. So it's a great introduction for students that are, again, writ large interested in the histories, the perspectives, the thoughts, the cultures, the languages of Afro-diasporic people. So again, that's a great course. And again, that's Introduction to Africana Studies. And it's offered both in the fall and in the spring semesters.
So for American studies, I think Dr. Myers said it well in terms of thinking about just introductory courses. That American Studies has an Introduction to American Studies, and WGSS has an Introduction to Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies. So these are kind of just, I think, core classes that if you're interested just in the subject matter itself, it's a good way to kind of learn about each of these programs in a very kind of general way. And that will just give you a kind of introduction. But I think if you're interested, and in none of these interdisciplinary programs, I think, and I should only speak for American Studies and WGSS, you don't have to take it in a specific order, right? So sometimes you end up taking another course that isn't the Intro to American Studies or Intro WGSS, and that's how you enter into the program. A lot of students who do enter into American Studies enter through the Richmond Seminar. And so that is a particular seminar that is community engaged, and it uses Richmond as a laboratory to explore these topics of American studies. And it really also engages community collaboration. And the idea is for the classes to co-create something together, either with the community partners or with the subject matter at hand. So sometimes classes create docudramas, sometimes they create museum exhibitions, sometimes they create digital projects. I think the other well-known course in American Studies is Digital Humanities, and that's a great course if you're interested in the ways in which the virtual world has affected our culture, right? And how it's also bringing into all these interdisciplinary frameworks. In terms of WGSS, there's a plethora of classes to select from. And again, there is no order, but some that come to mind that I think that are really interesting is Gender and Work, Gender, Sex, and Law. And again, none of these classes have prerequisites, so you're able to take them in. And so if this is a course that you're interested in, you would need to take Intro to Women's Studies to become a major in the program.
Yeah, so there's like two parts to the question. One is about the structure of the major, and the other is about what do smart first-year students do. The structure of the major for PPEL, there are 4 core courses, just as American Studies, I think, and then you choose studies from each of the disciplines that contribute: politics, philosophy, and economics, 1 from each, and then there are some area requirements. An ethics area requirement, a law-related course area requirement, and a political theory requirement. So that's the structure of the major, 4 core courses, and then you shop from the disciplines. And then you concentrate in one of the disciplines and take 5 courses in that discipline to complete the concentration. So what do smart first-year students do? Well, they take the FYS, because that's what they're required to do. They sign up for a wellness course that interests them, because that's what they're required to do. And then they find 2 more courses. I recommend just doing 4, not 4.5 in your first semester, because you also got a lot of other things to do that semester. You find 2 more courses that either satisfy a gen ed requirement or work towards your intended major, or both. If you're clever, you could do both in some ways. So you might look at, so if you're doing PPEL, if you take Intro to American Government or Intro to International Relations, or one of those introductory courses, it will both be useful towards the major and satisfy a social analysis gen ed requirement. Or similarly, you might think about taking a philosophy class, Introduction to Philosophy, which satisfies the literary studies requirement, or you could even do logic in your first year. Logic is an awesome class to take early, because it's the kind of class that enables you to do better in other courses, right? So don't take it late, take it early and use it in your other classes. It's kind of like calculus in that sense. And that will count both towards the PPEL major and satisfy a quantitative reasoning requirement. And then maybe also take a PPEL prefix course, if not in the first semester, then in the second semester, PPEL 261 or PPEL 262, just to get to know some of the students you might be working with in the program. So one of the problems we have as interdisciplinary programs is that our students are spread out across so many courses that they don't always get to be in the same classroom a lot. And so the community building component can be a bit of a challenge for interdisciplinary majors. And so getting a foothold in being in a PPEL prefix course already in your first year, and then thereby getting to know some of the older PPEL majors and getting their advice about what to do, I think is a very good idea. So that would be my menu, right? So your FYS, your wellness, a gen ed that also satisfies PPEL requirement later on, your PPEL prefix course, and then another gen ed requirement if possible, or just shop some things that interest you so you have fun in your first semester.
Yeah, I would stress also choose courses that you're passionate about, besides meeting the required courses. Part of going to college is exploring different disciplines and different things that you might not ordinarily often take, right? So try something new as well as tapping into those things that are interesting to you.
Absolutely. And just kind of echoing that too, I think one of the beauties of being at a liberal arts institution where we don't have very strict requirements is that it does provide a lot of flexibility. And I think in many ways, the flexibility that's really being stood up here as an asset in interdisciplinary studies programs, where students may or may not come in to the university knowing what they may want to pursue, but we have lots of opportunities to engage in that sort of exploration.
Yeah, I want to jump in on the flexibility. One of the beauties is that you can intend to take one major and even declare it and then change your mind later on. So you might think you want to be a PPEL major, but you find out that Africana studies is really where the action is for you. Go for it, right? Most of the classes you're going to take in your first year is probably going to be counting towards both or just about. So you can't really hurt yourself in that way. And that's also why I recommend shopping around just a little bit and trying something that sounds random but interesting, and see maybe that's really where your passion is rather than where you think it might be at this point.
Great. So at this point, we just wanted to open up for questions. If there's any other questions that you'd like to add into the Q&A box, we'll be around for a few more minutes to answer any questions that you might have. Okay. I'm not seeing any other questions. So again, thank you for joining us this evening, and thank you to our faculty panel for sharing their experiences and providing some additional insight into these really fascinating interdisciplinary studies programs. And if you have questions, I will put in the chat right now the email addresses of our panel.